Okay, I wanted to give some thoughts on the NFL, Zeke Elliott suspension and specifically, Roger Goodell more broadly, and the broad topic of NFL discipline. Now, here's the thing about this. Let's talk about the Zeke Elliott case first. I believe this was the Cowboys being targeted. I hated this suspension. It's ridiculous that he wasn't charged. He wasn't even arrested. The legal system had nothing to do with him. And then, like a year after the fact, the NFL comes in and suspends him. And the worst part was all these freaking sports commentators that normally back these NFL players, that all back Tom Brady, they were all, he deserved it and this and that. What a crock, because he's a Cowboy. That's why. And they're still talking about Greg Hardy. I love that. Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy was, they don't talk about Josh Brown much. They do talk about him, but it's, Greg Hardy was such a travesty. Oh, give me a break. Nobody gave a crap about Greg Hardy till he got hired by the Cowboys, It's all Cowboy hate from the frickin' Cowboy hating media mainstream. It's a joke. It pisses me off so much how they still bring up Greg Hardy, but Aaron Hernandez can kill 2 people for the Patriots. That's fine, They don't talk about that. But, Greg Hardy was the worst in the NFL. Greg Hardy, nobody gave a shit about Greg Hardy until he came to the Cowboys. Then all of a sudden, the Cowboys are so awful for hiring him. Oh, what a travesty. Greg Hardy is what a joke you are in NFL media and mainstream media. You make me sick. Bunch of Cowboy haters. And they all, even though the suspension was clearly ridiculous, they all, sided against Elliott because he plays for the Cowboys. And they'll never admit that. They'd laugh at me if they heard me say it. But it's absolutely true. But to me, there are certain suspensions in the NFL that are just so egregious. And I don't believe the Tom Brady one was one at all. But they're so egregious, that was just a case of all the Patriot fanboys. But they're so egregious, they just call out for something to be done. And I hate to say it, but this was one of them. 6 games is so much for a player in the NFL. The average running back gets like 2-3 good years. Now, you would hope Ezekiel Elliott, of all people, will have better than that. But if you're looking at the average running back, average NFL player's career is 3 years, you take almost half of one of those seasons, you've just destroyed a good chunk of his career. NFL running backs don't get that many games. You just took 6 of them away from him. You took half a season almost. So you got to look at this. This is huge. This is, like I said, this would be equivalent to a baseball player being suspended half the year. Or an NBA player, or what have you. This is huge, And to do it for such a light offense where there was really no evidence, where there was lots of evidence, it was just all... And the media wanted to be all out there showing this woman's bruises and everything and litigating the case. But it's funny, when Tom Brady, clearly doctors the ball, they all want to go to bat for him and present this fake evidence for him, and ignore the fact that his texts pretty much absolutely proved it, They all want to go and litigate the ideal gas law, okay, then explain to me his texts. He just about he told the investigators he had no contact with this trainer, and they found like 120 texts to him. And he told the NFL investigators that he didn't have any contact with this trainer that was doing the ball doctoring. And his texts were, just, you can talk, a lot of people will talk to the blue in their face about the ideal guy. Explain those texts, that and they'll say, there's no smoking gun. Those texts are the smoking gun. That was you never heard that phrase till that case. Then everybody want to talk about, there's no smoking gun. Yes, there is. You don't even understand what that means if you don't think there was. There's no smoking gun in any crime unless there was one in that case, I just loved how that was the big catchphrase the big media came up with, big corporate media came up with about the Brady case. There's no smoking gun. Smoking gun, That was on everybody's lips. What a bunch of crap. But I'm getting way off there. point is, the media is so biased against the Cowboys. Even now, they're all saying like this is wrong. His suspension should have been over. They're all almost 100% against Elliott. It's so much crap. Even people like I see on ESPN that, not to be racial, but they'll support any black player because some like Adrian Lawrence on ESPN, and I've seen her. She's against this. She's talking about how Elliott deserved it and everything. It's like, freaking, I just want to smack her, So you support every player, but all of a sudden, when it comes to a Cowboy, you're against him, and you're supporting the league. What a hypocritical joke you are. And all these people in the media, they're jokes. But anyways, they're a bunch of hypocrites. You can have wife beaters on any team, or criminals on any team. You had a Steeler a few years ago who hit somebody with a car and killed him. Nobody talked about that, But Zeke Elliot and Greg Hardy, they're just the end of the world. Gee, I wonder if it's because they play for the Cowboys, Of course it is. So it was a clear case of just ridiculousness to me, and it was a clear case of social justice warriors. If you look at this, there was a woman on the investigation who was like a big social justice warrior, and I guarantee you she was the one pushing for this. I forget her name. I think it was Lisa something, the white one. Now but there was, to me, it just went too far, and the NFL has been slapped down when they've gone too far. One of these examples, I think it was the one on Adrian Peterson, it got overturned, and it was permanently overturned, because it was just egregious, because they tried to apply they came in and they put in new standards, and they said, okay, this is the way we're going to deal with these things from now on. It was like a 4-game suspension. And then they tried to retroactively apply it to Adrian Peterson, and it wasn't you can't change the rules after the fact. That's like them saying, okay, let's say they say, okay, if you rob a liquor store, it's 5 years in jail. So I rob a liquor store, so I'm supposed to get 5 years. Then they change the law, and they go, okay, now it's 15 years when you rob a liquor store. And even though I robbed a liquor store, before they change the law, they go, okay, you're getting 15 years. You can't do that. That's illegal. You can't change the law after the fact, That's what they tried to do in the Adrian Peterson case, and the arbitrator and or the courts, I don't remember, overturned that because it was just so egregious. And to me, this is another case of it being so egregious, that something had to be done. If this had been a case that had more evidence, a case where he was actually charged or arrested or anything like that, I'd probably support the league. If this case was just so overreaching and out of bounds, for them, that a part of me supports the suspension being overturned. They were just targeting the Cowboys. They really are, and I don't stand for it. This is ridiculous. A 6-game suspension for this? Nothing? Are you serious? So part of me, I'm conflicted on this ruling. Part of me is glad that they tried to pick on the Cowboys because they're the Cowboys and they were slapped down. And I believe it was kind of one of those egregious cases that needs to be addressed. The NFL can get away with a lot, but they can't just be absurd about it. This was a case where they were absurd, So, in that respect, I'm glad that he overturned it. But in another respect, I do understand that the NFL needs to have the authority to make decisions. I mean, are we going to go to court and litigate every one of these suspensions? It's just stupid. And it's a case of these liberal judges getting involved where they shouldn't. And liberal judges are like the biggest problem in America right now. They're a joke. They get involved and meddle in everything. Look at Trump's immigration order. The Supreme Court went and they upheld him. And they said, look, Trump's order is legal after all these liberal courts overturned it. And all the liberal courts have gone back and just, they're hacking away at it from the underneath. Like they've been saying, I don't know how exactly it works, but it was like the Supreme Court said, close relatives of these people, these immigrants, can't be barred. So the liberal lower courts have been going back, just basically saying every third cousin and 16th cousin gets to come in because, this is what the Supreme Court made. They've just been hacking away and they don't accept any law. They just think they're so lawless, They think that they can do whatever they want and everybody gets to immigrate to the United States. Everybody, it's ridiculous. And so the liberal judges are just so annoying. And so from that perspective, this ruling kind of troubles me. And like I said, are we going to go to court about every stupid NFL suspension because these stupid liberal judges won't keep their hands on anything, you know? So part of me is happy the suspension got overturned, but part of me is like sick of these liberal judges and understands that the NFL, you may hate their decisions, but you need to abide by them, you know? We can't do this every time, you know? And these court cases are going to mean we do it every time. And the courts have no, you know, the courts are so lawless. The liberal courts are so lawless in America right now. You know, the whole thing that you keep hearing is if a company has arbitration, you have to abide by it. And it's only like the most ridiculous, egregious cases that a court's going to throw out. Well, now in the NFL, they're just throwing them all out. And they're just doing whatever they want, you know. It's ridiculous. So part of me is not, as much as I'm a Cowboy fan and homer, and I thought the Ezekiel suspension was unwarranted and railroading him and ridiculous and outlandish and way out of proportion to the crime and everything else that you couldn't even prove, you know. So in that respect, I'm glad it was thrown out. But the rational, I'm a conservative, so I'm rational. You know, the rational law and order side of me understands that you can't go to court and fight over every stupid NFL suspension. You know, this has got to stop at some point. And at some point, you have to understand that the NFL can do what they want, you know, under the CBA. If you want to change the CBA, go ahead and do that, you know, next time around. So, like I said, I'm split on it. Half of me likes that he threw out the suspension because I believe the Cowboys were targeted for being the Cowboys. Half of me is not happy with it because, you know, I see it was more liberal judge activism and more, you know, you can't keep doing this. Like I said, this just means every NFL suspension is going to be challenged now going forward, you know. That's not good. But let's get to an even larger point and a second point about this, which is why is the NFL involved? I got two more points on this. One about Roger Goodell, one about this. Why is the NFL involved in disciplining these guys? And I got to give props to Clay Travis on Fox Sports. Sometimes he annoys me, but sometimes he's brings up good takes. On Fox Sports Radio, he brought this up. So it kind of made me think about this and understand. He said, why is the NFL disciplining these players? You know, it's not their place. What are they doing? I never thought about that because you never hear that view in the mainstream media. But he's like, look, if I'm a doctor, he said, like, if I work for Walmart and I do domestic violence or something, they won't even know and they're not going to suspend me. So why should Zeke Elliot be? And some caller brought up, hey, look, if you're a doctor or a lawyer, you can be suspended by the bar or whatever it is for, like, misconduct and this and that. And Clay was like, that's a good point. Very good point. You know, he gave it to the caller. And he said, but I would say that, you know, like, there's certain occupations that society holds up as, you know, being like great occupations, like doctors, lawyers, you know, more important to society. And in those cases, you know, if a doctor is on drugs, for example, you know, he doesn't need to be a doctor. So that's different, you know. So he still kind of held to his point that, you know, in no other line of work are they trying to police their employees, and are they trying to suspend or fire people for what goes on, you know, domestic violence. They wouldn't even know, you know. If you work for Walmart and you commit domestic violence, Walmart doesn't have anything to do with that. You know, that's your business. You know, so why is the NFL different? And he said the common argument is, oh, but the NFL's got to do this because people won't watch if they perceive it as a lawless league with their players. First of all, he made a great point here, and again, as a conservative, irrational person, this really appealed to me. He said, like, studies have shown that the rates of domestic violence and crime in general in the NFL are much, much lower than society at large. I didn't know that. You never hear that. You know, the media always portrays it like, oh, the NFL's out of control. These lawless NFL players raping and killing everybody. The statistics, the reasonable stats say that's not so. They say the rate of crime in the NFL is much lower than the population at large. So this idea that the NFL just can't allow these players to go unsuspended because it would just lead to just total lawlessness and this and that are just not true, you know. Another thing he said is the theory is, and his co-hosts were debating this with him, that, like, ratings will go down and this and that if people perceive it as a league of thugs and this and that. And he's like, that's not true because we already know that people will watch the NFL either way. He said, look, Aaron Hernandez killed somebody and people still watch the NFL. You know, we have concrete evidence that the NFL being associated with crime in certain instances, people still watch, you know. So this whole idea that's predicated on the NFL has to be out there suspending these players or people will tune it out, you know, it's false, you know, and I agree with him. I hadn't really thought about it before, but these are all points that the media doesn't make. You know, the media just gives you one side of things all the time. But, like, you know, these points that the crime in the NFL is much lower than in society at large. And that the proof is people will watch the NFL even if, you know, maybe some of their players commit crimes sometimes, you know, which is going to happen. So his point was, like, why is Roger Goodell, you know, causing all these problems? And that's the thing. More and more, and it's coming to even bigger head with this Zeke Elliot disaster. It's like, the NFL is constantly in the news about this stuff for all the wrong reasons, and it puts like these ugly cases, you know. And I saw that the ratings for the Patriots-Chiefs season opener were down like 16% over last year. And last year they were down big from the year before. They've been down like several years in a row now. So, you know, the NFL is still very popular. Nobody's not denying that. But if anything, so the whole argument that Goodell needs to be out there policing these players or hurt the ratings, well, the ratings are being hurt now. And I might even argue that they're being hurt because he's out there policing these players, you know. Because what is the NFL in the news for? And they were talking about this recently on this NBA versus NFL debate I was talking about. But the NFL keeps being in the news for ugly reasons, you know. We litigate this Zeke Elliot ugly situation with this girl over and over, and did he beat her, and he made her or she had an abortion. It's just ugly stuff, you know. And this is what's been dominating the news NFL-wise for a while. You know, you don't think that's turning people off? And what's keeping it in the news? Roger Goodell and his discipline is what's keeping it in the news. You know? So my point here is, like, in Clay Travis's point on Fox Sports that I'm kind of stealing and kind of agreeing with, is like, wow, why Roger Goodell put himself in the impossible position of being judge, jury, executioner, and it's not just that, but like, why is it his business to police these players in the first place? He needs to get out. Clay Travis's point was, the NFL needs to get out of the policing the players business. It's not their job, you know. At no other job is it like this, you know. You know, if you work for Walmart and you commit domestic violence, they're not going to suspend you. So why, you know, why does it not hold throughout society, you know? So that's his point, and I'd never thought of it before, and also the aspects of, you know, the key points that the NFL violence rate is much lower than society, and that, you know, people have already proven they'll watch the NFL through crime. You know, look at O.J. Simpson, look at Aaron Hernandez, you know. So, not that makes it right, but, you know, like I said, I think at this point you just have to say that these trying to police these players and every ticky-tacky thing they do is just getting out of hand and is hurting the league. And it's keeping the league in the news for all the wrong reasons constantly. So they're trying to take attention off these crimes. They've just focused more on it, you know. And the final thing I wanted to talk about was Roger Goodell. And I've never liked Roger Goodell, and I think that he is coming to the forefront here. I used to hate Roger Goodell, and then what kind of swayed me more his way was when he suspended Brady, and he held to it. And so I liked him for that because I agreed with the Brady suspension. And, you know, and he took so much heat for that, and he stood his ground. So that's when I started kind of liking Goodell. But before that, I always hated his guts. And here's why I hated his guts. Because Roger Goodell wants to portray himself as tough on crime. And first of all, in and of itself, I think that's stupid. It's the easy thing for every politician. Every local politician wants to be tough on crime. But what does that mean, and is it a good idea always? No. It's just the easy thing to appeal to dumb people. You know, I'm going to be tough on crime. Well, we don't need to be sending every low-level nonviolent drug offender to federal prison for 20 years. That's being tough on crime, but it's bullshit. And, this is coming from a conservative, right? So, I like to think I'm a logical conservative. So, what was my point here? I forgot what I was talking about. Just completely lost track. I don't know why I keep doing that in my videos. I was talking about Zeke Elliot. Oh, Goodell, yeah. And so Goodell wanted to just come in and be the tough guy. And in and of itself, I don't necessarily like that. I think it's the easy way out. But if you want to be consistent about it, at least you're consistent, and I can respect that. Here's what killed me about Goodell, and here's where I really, really turned against him. And I'm trying to think of the guy's name, is why I can't get to the anecdote. He was a player for the No, he was not the Texans. I know Andre Johnson was involved in it, and at that time he played in Texas. It was a few years ago. And I forgot the guy's name, but he was a corner. And he was famous for causing problems, and being an instigator. Kind of like, who's that? Richie Incognito, kind of. I forget Courtney Finnegan, I think it was. I think that's exactly right. I think it was Courtney Finnegan. And he was a corner or a safety, and he was playing on Andre Johnson one time. And what he did was, they got in a little scrap, right? And Courtney Finnegan, Andre Johnson ripped Courtney Finnegan's helmet off, I think it was, and he starts slugging him. And he hits him in the back of the head a couple times. I don't remember if I'm pretty sure he didn't have his helmet on. And, and there's some, it was a pretty decent fight, It was broken up, whatever. And so I'm like, if Roger Goodell is the Law and Order Commissioner and it's safety, all about safety, I just saw Andre Johnson, take a guy's helmet off and hit him in the back of the head with a fist, You want to talk about safety. You should have come down so hard on Andre Johnson. They gave him a slap on the damn wrist. Because all the media was going, Courtney Finnegan's a punk, and Courtney Finnegan's the instigator, and it's all Courtney Finnegan's fault. I don't care. That's a moment where it doesn't matter what public opinion is. You got to take a stand. And you should have hammered Andre Johnson. He punched another player in the back of the head. It doesn't get any worse and more unsafe than that. But he bowed to public opinion, Goodell. And I don't remember what he did, but it was a slap on the wrist, Andre Johnson. It was nothing. And I went, that's it. I'm done with Goodell. He's a joke. Because what I learned then is that he's not consistent. Okay, if you want to be the Law and Order Commissioner, come down hard on everybody. Don't come down hard on this guy and not come down hard on this guy. And he didn't come down hard on Andre Johnson. That just told me right there he's a creature of public opinion, because the public doesn't like Courtland Finnegan, whatever his name was, because the public didn't like him. Well, it's okay for him to be punched in the back of the head, by another player, and we won't discipline the other player much, 10,000 fine or whatever it was, no suspension, slap on the wrist. That just makes me sick, that kind of stuff, because of public opinion. That's why he did it. Because the public didn't like Courtland Finnegan. And to me, that's just, it makes the hairs on my neck stand up, You gotta be consistent. And the NFL smells. The players have never always hated Goodell. And the reason is because they smell that he's not honest, and he's not straight and narrow, and he is inconsistent, and he's arbitrary in his discipline. And that has carried throughout all of this, What's coming out of the NFL is always arbitrary. This guy gets 6 games, this guy gets 1 game, And that's coming up with Zeke Elliot right now. 6 games? That's crazy. Okay, so they've got this new domestic violence policy, which a bunch of liberals forced them to do. A bunch of social justice warrior women came in and said, you better, you better smack down on domestic violence. And so they went, we're going to be tough on domestic violence. They shouldn't have done that either. It's going to be one of those things where domestic violence, okay, so It's like hate crimes to me. They're stupid, you know? So if I hit you because of your color, it's bad. It's worse than if I hit you just because I hit you. You got hit either way, you know? It should be the same penalty. It's a crock. It's the same thing with domestic violence. It's going to get to this point where domestic violence is, just, the worst thing in the world. And it's not, it's bad, it's horrible, it's awful. But it's not the worst thing in the world, Depending, what if you just barely push a woman? You just barely push her. I'm sorry, but you have to look at that and say, okay, yeah, he touched a woman. He barely pushed her. She wasn't hurt at all. You can't just go, oh my gosh, domestic violence, 6 games. But we're in this place in our society where the liberals and the screeching liberals control everything to an extent that, and the social justice warriors, and they've gone out there and they've said anything, if you lay a finger on a precious woman ever, you deserve to be thrown in jail for life. And we can't have any debate. If you say anything to the contrary, you're going to lose your job as an NFL commentator, as a sports commentator, as anything. So none of these, talk show hosts can say anything different, They're all going to be railroaded into just, cowering to the man, in this case the woman. The social justice warriors that decree that domestic violence is the worst thing. And it's about degree, and it's about, yes, domestic violence is bad, but if you look at the injuries that Zeke Elliott's girl had, they weren't that bad, and you could never say that. If anybody got up there on national radio and said, Zeke Elliott's girlfriend's injuries weren't that bad, he'd be fired instantly, But it's the fact. She had little bruises. And the pictures always make bruises look worse. But if you look, she had minor bruises. And I'm sorry, I'm going to take that into account, And like I said, there's not a national TV host or a local host who could ever get up there and say, like, you know what, those bruises aren't that bad. And I get it. It would look terrible to say that, But to me, you have to say that, you have to look at degree as well. And you have to look at, she didn't die, Is it, is that better than the old Steelers player who ran into and killed somebody with his car and nothing happened to him, You have to look at degree. You have to look at all these things. And domestic violence is terrible. Of course I'm not condoning it. But there's no place for debate in society right now because liberals run everything with an iron fist, You can't say anything on a lot of subjects. You can't speak the truth about them or you'll just be fired. It's being an outrageous comment and you'll be fired. Okay, so that's my point though about, I guess I don't know where I went with that, but my point is Roger Goodell, the players smell that he's not on the up and up. He's not. As much as I liked him a lot better after the Brady thing, I've still always had an issue. I think he's the cause for a lot of these problems the NFL's having right now. Because the players don't respect him because they know he's arbitrary. And that nobody in the media will ever talk about this or anything, but the Cortland Finnegan thing was what really soured me on Goodell. How he handled that turned me on him forever, Because like I said, it proved to me he's a creature of public opinion. He's not a creature of law or justice. And he's not consistent even. I might disagree with a commissioner that's tough on crime. And he goes out there and he gives, if guy X does something, he gives him 6 games. If guy Y does something, he gives him 6 games. I might say, man, 6 games is way too much. This is ridiculous. But at least I can respect him for being consistent. What gets me about Goodell is he'll give one guy 6 games and one guy 1 game for the same thing. And I think honestly it's time for Goodell to go, I think they just signed him to a new deal. Why? I never thought he was that good of a commissioner before. Look at all these problems, now you've got declining ratings and the owners may not care about anything else, but let me tell you, they're going to care about that. And you look at all these, suspension problems and this latest Zeke Elliot catastrophe, that all comes from no leadership at the top and the fact that Goodell is not consistent and he's not trustworthy and he's not, he's not respected by the players. He's never been respected by the players because he doesn't, engender that respect because he's inconsistent and arbitrary and capricious in his discipline. He's going to just throw out willy-nilly. This guy gets a game, this guy gets 10 games. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And, like I said, if he thinks a player is popular, you can hit that player in the back of the head, or unpopular, Whereas if it had been Tom Brady hitting the back of the head, that player would have been suspended for a year, So that's, to me, the problem with Goodell. So that's the 3 things I wanted to talk about: the case itself and my conflicted feelings. The fact that, I'm coming around to the opinion that why is the NFL disciplining these players in the first place, And 3, just that Goodell causes a lot of this because he isn't consistent and he isn't straight up and he isn't honest, and he probably needs to go. Because like I said, you've got all these bad headlines for the NFL, this latest Zeke Elliot suspension disaster, and then, even you've got ratings way down in the opener, and they've been down for several years. It's down on top of down. 2016 ratings were way down. So then for 2017, its first game to be way down in 2016, and, it's been a trend for several years now, I believe. So anyways, that's my video.